I'm back from my break. I know it was very awkward for me to drop off making videos for a month and a half right in the middle of covering the Chaotix rather than actually finishing it, but I knew something like this was coming. I hoped I could finish it fully before it happened so the break was a bit more natural, but life happens, you know? I did a couple of things over the break, including getting a new mic setup for anyone who thinks I'm sounding a little different, but most of them were for an upcoming project I'm really excited to get into after finishing these last two Chaotix members, so it'll be just a little longer until you really see any of the fruits of my labour. For now though, we've got the second to last Chaotix character to cover, and first of the mechanics, Heavy. I got plenty of comments on the Mighty video talking about this guy when I mentioned Mighty should have a few more defensive options, and while I still stand by that statement and knew this was coming, I can't say that the people were wrong to bring me up on it. Heavy is a defensive powerhouse, but there's a couple of other things to them too, so let's get into this. I really shouldn't need to give any sort of introduction to what character archetype Heavy fits into. I mean, just look at them. They're a heavy chunk of metal with no real characteristics outside a pair of boxing gloves, who existed in their single playable title to be the literal personification of dead weight. In Knuckles' Chaotix, they really didn't have much in the way of interesting gameplay. As one of the two dud choices in the character roulette, they basically existed to be a sentient ball and chain bound to the actual Chaotix member to slow them down and drag them into any gaps they tried to jump over. They were admittedly invincible, but then looking at them, there isn't much to damage in the first place. That isn't really enough to fill out a genuine moveset though, so Team Combi-Rings has clearly given some thought on how to update Heavy to be an actual character, while still being clunky and a bit of a nuisance. Without another character to be bound to, the dead weight gimmick has been changed to be more of a defensive charge character, with the invulnerability trait remaining and two new moves being added alongside it, and I think it's honestly pretty fun. I don't really need to cover Heavy's invincibility, as it acts probably exactly as you'd expect. You can't be damaged by any enemy or enemy attack, as well as most level gimmicks, with the closest to a reaction being knocked around very slightly so that sprites don't begin to clip into each other. With that being said, you can still be crushed, you can still drown or suffocate in space, which is even less suffocation here than most other robots, as Heavy is powered by springs and therefore shouldn't have delicate electronic systems being damaged, which is the justification used for Metal Sonic, but whatever, I've long accepted robots just drown in SRB2. And standing in lava causes a ring drain effect, though you only actually die when you reach 0, all pretty much what you'd expect. You could probably take a gander at what Heavy's abilities proper are and be more or less there too, seeing as they're a weighty lump of steel filled with springs. Their jump ability is the coil jump, effectively a chargeable super jump fused with a ground pound. Hold jump to begin charging the coil jump, and release to fly up into the sky. Press jump again, or just fall far enough, as Heavy will perform this latter effect automatically if given enough time, to smash back down into the ground, creating a shockwave. Simple ability, but there is some further depth here. Firstly, as the coil jump is charged by holding jump, Heavy has effectively lost the standard jump. To accommodate the charging mechanic, there is a slight delay between even tapping the button and Heavy performing the jump, not present in most characters, which builds towards the intentional unwieldiness of the moveset. Therefore, even basic movement needs to be somewhat planned in advance, as you can't necessarily react to obstacles in quite the same way, especially when Heavy's weight causes them to drop much earlier when using springs and the like than most. Once again unwieldy, but once again it feels very deliberate, and I honestly quite like how it makes Heavy stand out from simply being a bruiser sort of character to instead fell a more unique niche. You almost end up thinking mechanically about how you'll proceed. Whether that is intentional is less certain, but it certainly made Heavy a more mechanically interesting playstyle. Considering that this can admittedly be quite difficult to come to grips with, you do get some slight leeway with timing your jumps through the addition of a phantom jump, which is just another name for coyote time from games like Celeste. Accidentally walking off a ledge because you held jump just a little too long isn't immediately a death sentence like with most characters, because Heavy gives you a little time to let go of jump and still get some, albeit much reduced, height. It isn't much, but when paired with his spin ability, it can give you an opportunity to still make it over pitch you'd otherwise fall straight into, and even has the potential to be used for a more advanced plays by stopping you from losing time waiting to land from the much higher charged coil jump. This spin ability is the Train Rush, where Mighty puts all of their weight behind one shoulder and blasts forward, destroying pretty much anything in their way. You can think of it sort of like an on-demand boost mode, seeing as it destroys pretty much the same things and acts as a form of instant acceleration, though it doesn't usually reach those kinds of speeds, which is a good thing, seeing as it would go against Heavy's whole thing of being slow and unwieldy. It certainly stops Heavy from being an unusably slow, incredibly boring slog though, and can also be used in mid-air to counteract how much the curl jump breaks your momentum, but it still has limitations to stop it from being used in every situation. For example, you can't really charge a coil jump and perform the Train Rush at the same time. You physically can, but doing both will quickly cause the Train Rush to taper back off, so you do need to effectively choose speed or verticality. It also has a lower priority than the coil jump shockwave drop effect, so you can only use it in the air for a short while before terminal velocity is reached and you plummet like a stone rather than keep your horizontal momentum. This means that even despite how it can be used to get some forward movement in the air, platforming is still a finicky and oftentimes difficult thing, which I assume is once again intentional. Finally, the Train Rush will also bounce off walls after reaching top speed, so you can quite easily lose all of the speed you've gained by turning just a little too early or late around a corner, or by hitting a pillar. Here's a fun feature of SRB2 I didn't give too much thought to before I went off on my break: Pandora's Box, a bonus for effectively 100% in the game by collecting every emblem. I have no idea how I did this, by the way. I certainly don't know myself, can't recall downloading 100% save file, and I don't remember downloading a mod to do it either. It allows you to do things like set your rings and lifetimer to whatever you want, and more importantly, unlock all Chaos Emeralds on any file without slogging through all of the night stages. I've looked back and realised I've had access to it for ages, so I could have covered super forms for tons of characters and haven't. Whoops, my bad. I can regret my past, but I can only change my future. So, hey, think of it this way. At least I realised my mistake now we're not in another dozen characters. But yeah, I'll also be adding a section to these reviews where applicable for any characters that have some form of transformation. By super form standards though, Heavy is pretty much as vanilla as you can get. Grey parts of the sprite become gold, they can jump higher, the Train Rush makes you go faster, shockwaves are bigger, woo, it's about all you can expect, but if you were hoping for something more exciting, look to other characters who can do things with the Soul Emeralds and stuff. The super form is a very standard set of buffs preserved over basically everyone, so I can't really knock Heavy for sticking to the formula. It's kind of difficult to say much about Heavy aesthetically, because they're basically just a cartoon weight on stubby little rectangle feet wearing giant boxing gloves. There's not a great deal to work with in terms of animation, because there's barely anything to animate. They have a lot of pretty standard animations. Their Train Rush and Coil Jump are pretty much what you'd expect from a Ground Pound and Soda Charge. Well animated soar and with nice effects, but nothing quite out there, quite reserved. Jumping and transforming are the same, and the super form is just a gold overlay to what was originally silver. The idol is alright, they just scratch their head looking vaguely confused. I think a standout is when you use the rope things in Castle Eggman and Heavy just ends up spinning sideways. It gives a sort of klutzy nature to them. Overall, well animated, but nothing crazy or stand out enough that I noted for me to bring up specifically, like I did with a lot with Vector and Espio, or indeed more negatively with Mighty. Just a baseline sort of good. Overall, Heavy is a fun character, a unique playstyle due to the limitations surrounding being a sentient weight, where you need to balance your moveset and traversal it in a unique way I haven't really seen anywhere else. It's technically possible to do both at once, but you're better off jumping between using the curl jump, then the Train Rush and then back rather than try and juggle them. Platforming can be a bit of a nightmare due to this, but because it befits the character, I can forgive that. I think Heavy really lives up to their full potential. Sadly, that full potential is only really about an 8. Not every character can reach a 10, even excluding their potential execution problems. Certainly not a blemish on the Chaotix though. Next episode is going to be the bomb, literally. I apologise for my extended break though. I hope you enjoyed the video, and ciao.